How's it going, everyone? Brad Borne here, and this is the 33rd Fancy Pants Adventures World 3 report. So last report I added a very early, very rough, new level, entirely new level to the sneak peek. That was Misplaced Caves. And since then I've been working on that level and uploading it step by step into the sneak peek so everybody can play it as I'm making it. So here we are, and I'm going to talk about the process so far. What's been completed is the actual level design. So last video you saw kind of the outline of everything, and there were placeholder stars for where important items are going to be. We'll do that later. But what's done since then, I'm just now completing the background, and the foreground was finished right before that. And I tried to keep it pretty simple for this level, focusing mostly on the texture of everything, since it's this rocky, cavey feel. And even in the very first outline, there were places that had very bumpy, rocky textures. And I think for me, the cave levels are, as you probably see a lot of them in the games, but they're probably the easiest to do just because, I want these big, grand designs. And, I just sort of put ramps and walls in places, wherever I feel like they need to go. And if you do, say, a level set in the city, every time you put a wall, you have to think of what could be there, a crane or a building or a very funny shaped building or a very funny shaped ground or thing coming out of a building that makes no sense whatsoever. So cave levels are by far the easiest. And then even when working on the backgrounds, you can just put more rock as long as the design is interesting. And a funny thing about the backgrounds, see when people see, just kind of how Flash works, when people see a very complete 16-bit looking game, a game that looks like it, pixel art or not, looks like something that'd be on a Super Nintendo or a Sega Genesis. People end up being really impressed kind of that, that Flash can go that far and make a complete game like that. I guess you see Flash more for, for little Facebook games or little casual games as they call them nowadays. But really, when you're drawing straight into Flash or importing art into Flash, Flash can do a lot more than old 16-bit consoles can do because they were constrained to these tile sets, and you have to have the tile for everywhere. For somebody like Rare, you can have a computer just output these giant, massive, awesome tile sets that are gorgeous. But then some games, and if you're a smaller team, I guess you have a lot of repeating tiles and all. And Flash, you don't. I mean, you can do a tile engine, but Flash can handle these big, massive images and drawings. And so in the backgrounds, you have just a lot of drawing that's not repeated. So it's much cooler, I think. And I try to take advantage of that a lot, so that none of the backgrounds repeating. But that's something I think it's really interesting. Not a lot of people think about how much more Flash is capable. It can handle a lot more animations. Can handle these bigger images. Because you see it, used for such a limited game genre. Nowadays there's almost a Flash game genre, and I just think that's really interesting because I don't feel like I see many developers taking advantage of Flash's unique strengths. And I pretty recently went back and replayed some of the old Donkey Kong Country games, and I really like how thick the foreground is. The camera's almost set isometrically. Since they were doing everything on computers, it's a lot easier for them to do. But, since I'm drawing everything in, that's something I can try to do. And especially, I think it works very well in the cave levels. It almost feels like you're sandwiched between a ton of rock underground. And since everything's hand-drawn, I can shift perspective as the level goes on. Most people probably won't even notice it, but on the left, the camera's pointing kind of left, and on the very right of the stage, the camera's pointing kind of right. So you're really boxed in underground. And that's something I could really run with now that I have 5 levels of background. It's a lot more than the World 2 had. Let's see, World 1 had 1 moving background, World 2 had 1 moving and 1 static background. World 3 has a static background, 5 layers of scrolling background, and then the foreground. And so one of those layers I can keep very close up and give a subtle parallax effect directly behind the foreground. I think that looks really cool. And even as far as gameplay is concerned, having backgrounds is really important. If you're jumping between 2 platforms or something and you lose sight of the foreground, you can still kind of judge your movement based on the backgrounds. And that's it. That's my rantings and musings on the level art, basically. And stay tuned. Next video is going to be on the squiggles that you collect and the micro trial. It's an interact layer, how I set up the level. And if you want to play the level as I make it, be sure to check out bornegames.com. I'll be updating that until the next video. And if you want to support the creation of World 3, the Fancy Pants Avengers is out now on XBLA and PSN, containing a completed and expanded World 1 through 3, so if you need more Fancy Pants Adventures right now, that's the best way to get it. And finally, if you want to keep up with all the latest news, subscribe here on YouTube, like us on Facebook, that's the Fancy Pants Adventures, and follow us on Twitter at RunFastRunFancy. Until next time, stay fancy. I'd try that. It sounds terrible.